Hey everybody, it's Dr. May. How are you? It's been a long time, and I'm sorry about that. Number one, I've been kind of crazy busy, and number two, I really just hadn't found a topic that I thought would be good for a video or a video series. But recently, I read a book, and I came across this skill called Ruler, which is kind of a motion regulation skill, and I really kind of liked it. So I thought, all right, so this will be the one that I'm going to do to break my video fast. Okay, so let me bring this up for you, and we'll get started. Um, so I described as becoming the ruler of your emotions. So getting a little more access to them, a little more understanding and control and expression improvement. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I created this little image here with AI using my new AI skills. All right. So what does ruler stand for? So it stands for recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate. So I got this from a book called Permission to Feel by Dr. Marc Brackett. It was actually a very good book. I recommend it. I'm not getting any commission to say that, but it actually was a good book. So in a nutshell, ruler is a skill that could help us to identify what we're feeling. So that's the R, U, and L. So it's recognizing, understanding, and labeling. And then the ER is about how we could then manage our emotions by expressing them appropriately and regulating them if we need to. All right, so I'm going to flesh out these a little bit more for us. So here we go. So the R for recognize. So the first thing to do is to recognize the fact that you're feeling something, or maybe there was some kind of an emotional shift. Maybe an emotion came up that was a little different from what you were just feeling and it caught your attention. So in a way, I guess you could describe it as like a mindfulness moment. Like, I guess, oh, emotion's here. What's going on? And you could start to notice some of the things that are giving you the clue that you're experiencing your emotions. So it might be a change in your thinking. Maybe you have racing thoughts. Maybe you're kind of drawing a blank. You have a hard time concentrating. Maybe you're judging or blaming other people. Maybe physically you're noticing things like a certain tightness or tension, or your heart racing, or tightness in your stomach, fluttering in your stomach, a little nausea, just different changes in your energy level, maybe like very high arousal or very low arousal. Breathing might shift, might be holding your breath, you might be breathing quickly. Or maybe on a positive side, you notice that like a certain tension relief happened. I'm feeling more relaxed now. Oh, that's a shift. Wow, I'm feeling a little better. So it might just be in a general way you're recognizing that there's some kind of a emotion arising. All right, so that's the recognize. All right, so I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm officially getting old and just could see me just a little bit better. Okay, so anywho, understand. So that's the next step. So now that I recognize that there's an emotion here, the next thing to try to do is, well, gee, I wonder why I'm feeling that. What was going on that made me have this new shift in my emotional state? So you could consider, is there something that's been happening around me or with the people I'm interacting with that led me to feel differently? Is there something going on within me? Like maybe I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling sick, I have a pain, a bad memory came up or a good memory came up. I just woke up from a dream. Maybe there's something like that that's happening that's creating the emotion. Think about different factors. It could be a few different things going on that are contributing. So kind of identifying that gives us a better idea of like what's happening and maybe eventually what I could do to shift the way I'm feeling. So the L is for label. So now that I recognize I'm kind of feeling a certain way, I'm beginning to understand what the causes are. So now it's my turn to do feeling words. Think about like, how could I fill in the sentence, I feel? So instead of using these very generalized terms, like people might say, I feel upset, or you might have a favorite emotion word, I feel anxious, and that covers a whole lot of different things, but it's very broad. The idea is to kind of get a little more specific, maybe really consider what your feelings might be, and it might be a few different ones at once. So why bother? So when you label your emotions, you're activating your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, and you're bringing it back online. So when we're emotional, our higher level of thinking sometimes goes out the window and we're not really clear. But when we bring our prefrontal cortex back online and we're thinking more clearly, it kind of helps us down regulate our emotion by being able to, okay, I get it now. I get I'm feeling sad. I guess I'm disappointed. I guess I'm hurt. Oh, okay. It helps us understand ourselves better. And once we have those words, it also helps us communicate better because a lot of times it's helpful to share our feelings with a trusted person. And when we have the words to do it, it helps to make ourselves understood and then increases our chances of getting a better response. And the book was talking about that there's some studies that show that people who are good at labeling their feelings actually are better at emotion regulation than people who are not. And the more specific you're able to get, the better your emotion regulation abilities. So that's a little bit of an incentive, right, to get a little more specific and better at getting those feeling words in there to explain your experience to yourself and others. So let's take a look at that. So here are a few examples of how you could do that. So one, this is from the book, from the Permission to Feel book from that I was talking about before. So this is kind of interesting. It might be a little small for you to see, but I'll explain it. And you can find this on the internet. Just do a Google image search and use the words mood meter. So it's on two different planes. So on the bottom, like or left to right, they're talking about low pleasantness on the left, gradually increasing to high pleasantness on the right. So the more to the left you are in this chart, the lower the pleasantness of the emotion. The more to the right you are on the chart, the higher the pleasantness of your emotion. And then the other plane going up and down, like the y-axis, if I'm remembering correctly from high school math. So there's low energy on the bottom and there's high energy on the top. So before you could think of the words, if you're not really sure, think of, okay, if I'm checking in with myself mindfully, how pleasant or unpleasant is my emotion? And see where you could find yourself on the chart from left to right. Approximately where would you place yourself? And then think, okay, if I'm checking in with my energy level, am I have high arousal or am I feeling like really blah and low arousal? So you can kind of start to narrow it down to a quadrant. And once you're in that quadrant, take a look at the words and see which ones seem to make sense to you based on your experience. And that might give you a good clue of like, oh yeah, I thought I was angry, but maybe I'm also a little irritated, or maybe I'm also a little apprehensive, or a little bit tense about something. Like maybe more words will occur to you than occurred to you before. So that's one of the good things about this chart. And I actually printed it and laminated it, and we're going to share it in some of my groups. I'm kind of excited about that. Okay, so this is the famous feelings wheel. This is also very easy to find on the internet. Plus, they have things you could order, posters and so forth, with different versions of a feeling wheel. And believe it or not, I was actually looking for a psychology-related pillow for one of my chairs in my office, and they actually have feeling wheel pillows. I mean, believe it or not. So you could hug your pillow and find your feelings at the same time. How do you like that? So this one is nice because you could get the general word that most people know, such as happy, and then you could kind of get a little more specific, like all these things seem to fall under happy. And then you could find which ones feel right and capture your experience the best. Another thing to point out too, as well, is that in the DBT curriculum, in the workbook, there are sheets that talk about feelings in a lot of detail, like what are the common triggers for this feelings and how do I feel experience it in my body and what are the kind of thoughts I would have if I had this feeling. And reading that helps us to get more of that specificity also. And it has different related feeling words and all that kind of stuff. So if you have those materials, it's always good to look at that. They're really well written. Okay, and if those are too complicated for you and or your clients, if you're a therapist, go simple, like use emojis or use like very basic stuff with visuals. I use this particular handout here that I made in some of my groups. Like sometimes we'll have a discussion like, how are you feeling today, right now, or over the last week? What are some of the emotions you believe you felt, or what are some emotions you feel frequently on this chart versus not much at all? And it kind of gets people thinking and using their emotion vocabulary, and it helps people to do a little better than they would have done had they not had the chart in front of them. So it kind of helps them take it to the next level. So you could do the same for yourself. All right, so I think we got the idea there. So now we're on the E for express. So I kind of understood the emotional experience more for myself with the R, U, and L, and now I'm getting ready to express it. So perhaps the express has to do with sharing it with somebody, or putting it out there in another way to get it out from just inside myself. And the express kind of involves too, like some judgment about how and when it might be appropriate to express your emotions, so that it works for you. Because there's ways to express it that could be very destructive or very inappropriate. But if you learn appropriate ways to do it, you can have more positive feedback and help get your needs met better. So here are a few things to think about with express. So, whoops, sorry. When I did RODBT, if some of you guys followed my videos on that, there's a skill called self-inquiry, which is like asking yourself questions to try to clarify your experience or kind of go a little bit deeper. And they even consider it a mindfulness how skill, like how do I get a little bit better at observing, describing, and participating by using these questions to kind of expand my experience. So I'm using the term self-inquiry here to get to how I could express things. So kind of things we could ask ourselves. So is this the right person or people to share my emotions with? So considering who you want to share your emotions with or the experience surrounding them is important. I mean, is this person going to validate me? Are they more likely to be understanding, or are they more likely to be critical? What's been my experience with this person in the past, sharing emotions, if any? Have I seen them respond well to other people, which might give me a clue of how they might respond to me? So, selecting the right kind of person is good. Like maybe a trusted friend or a family member, or a therapist, relative, but maybe you wouldn't want to share it with your boss. I mean, maybe certain circumstance, you wouldn't want to share it with a stranger waiting in line at the store. It depends on the circumstance, but there's it's worth considering. All right, so next one, is this the right setting for expressing my emotions? So, maybe if you want to wait till you have some quiet time with somebody, you have some privacy, there's some a personal space or office or a car or taking a walk. Maybe that's feels good to you. Maybe it's not appropriate in the middle of your classroom or a business meeting, or some other, or Thanksgiving dinner may not be the right time, for example. Is this a good time to express my emotions? So think about for yourself and for the other person. Am I feeling ready? Do I feel like I'm ready to say what I'm prepared to say? Do I think I'll keep my cool? Do I think the other person has time for me right now, or are they in the middle of something? Are they having a good day or a bad day? Is it a bad time for them? So considering that stuff is important. And also, what's an appropriate level of intensity to express my emotions? Sometimes it's important to be kind of modulated and subtle about it. Other times it might make sense to be more open or more intense about it to really get your point across. And finally, is it best to express my emotions with words, or should I use other forms of expression instead? So sometimes, you want to talk about it. It's important to say it. Other times, maybe you want to write it. Maybe you want to write someone an email, or you want to write it in your journal, or maybe you want to paint a picture about it. So I have a, paint in that picture I included here. Maybe you want to do a dance or a movement to help express yourself. Maybe there's a posture that helps to express your feeling. So there could be a variety of ways, and it doesn't have to be just one. You could maybe do it a few different ways. All right, so just some things to think about. There's probably more things to think about, but these are some of the key things that occurred to me. And then finally, R for regulate. So one of the challenges we might experience is experiencing emotions that are too extreme or absent. So if they're too extreme, you may want to learn ways to kind of bring them down to a more comfortable level and to a way where it won't be too destructive to yourself or other people to express them. And other times you might feel very emotionally dead inside, and you might have to practice getting more access to your emotions to kind of make them more available to you. And a lot of that I talk about in my sensory motor psychotherapy videos and things like that. But just to define emotion regulation, because this is about regulate, they say it's the process by which we influence, two witches here, by which we influence which emotions we have, when we have them, and how we experience and express them. So this involves first monitoring and checking in with myself and my emotions. Where are they at? And okay, so this is my anger is at a level 8 out of 10. So where do I want it to be? Maybe be more comfortable at a 5. So now I could make me take some skills to kind of bring myself down a little bit to a more comfortable level that's going to feel better in this moment. So that's adjusting the intensity of your emotions. And then sometimes, I could do things that might shift which emotions I have. So maybe if I changed it around, I wouldn't be angry about something. I'd be understanding, or I would be calm about it. So I might be able to shift which emotions I experience based on the very same trigger. All right, so this is cool here. They talked about in the book categories of emotion regulation. And I thought these were kind of neat. I mean, they kind of make sense, and they might help you organize the skills that you choose to try. So the first one they talk about is mindful breathing. So of course, there's a whole lot of research about how helpful breath can be and how it could regulate our nervous system and calm our arousal. So especially if you have a longer exhale, it kind of brings our arousal down. And if we have a longer inhale, it gives us more energy and helps to bring our arousal up. And there's a million different breathing exercises out there, and many you could find on apps or the internet or YouTube. So feel free to experiment. A lot of books talk about mindful breathing, especially things related to yoga and meditation and so forth. So pick your favorite mindful breathing exercises and try to put them into action and practice them when you're not really dysregulated, so you can kind of get used to them so that you can apply them when you actually need them. Okay, next is what they called forward-looking strategies. So this is kind of like thinking ahead, thinking of consequences. Um, Thinking about, all right, if I express this way, what's going to happen next? If I express it that way, is that going to change the outcome? What kind of future do I want for myself after expressing this emotion? So in DBT, they would say one of them might be thinking of consequences. So planning, so if I'm really angry and I throw this chair, number one, I'm going to have to pay for the chair and replace the chair. And then I could kind of create a whole disruption. People might get scared of me and so forth. So maybe I don't want those consequences, even if it temporarily helps me. It's things like that. So pros and cons are related to that. It's a little more, fleshed out about what could happen. What's the good part of reacting this way? What's the bad part of reacting this way? And cope ahead skills, I think, are kind of forward looking too, because it's like, all right, I know this stressor is coming up. What could I do to plan ahead to make sure I could cope with that better? Or maybe I could choose a different circumstance so I don't have to face that trigger in the future. So all those are forward looking and could be really important. So planning ahead could be helpful. So next is what they called attention shifting strategies. So this is very similar to DBT distraction skills. So instead of putting all my focus and attention on the things that are upsetting me and creating the negative emotions, I could shift my attention to other things that are happening that might reduce my emotions. So instead of, let's say, obsessing about the problem over and over and over again, and that's capturing my attention, if I put my music on, like the guy in the picture, maybe I'll start thinking about the song and the lyrics, and it'll create a different feeling and it'll shift my attention, and now I'll feel calmer. All right, cognitive reframing strategies. So this is more typical CBT stuff sometimes. So it's like kind of identifying the cognitive distortion that could be creating more of an intense emotion and maybe thinking about it differently so that I have a calmer emotion as a result. Reducing judgment, so like non-judgmental thinking is helpful here. Validation could be important. So instead of blaming somebody or getting really furious at them because of it's all your fault, maybe I could put myself in their shoes and empathize with them and see it from their point of view. And now I could calm down about it because I have a broader picture. It could be related to checking the facts. So maybe if I see the picture more broadly and I checked all the facts about the situation, having that extra info could help me react differently. All right, so that's just some examples that related to DBT for cognitive reframing, but sometimes the way we think about it can make a big difference in how we feel. So next is the meta moment. So meta means kind of like going above where you were and incorporating more things. So like a meta-analysis in research is not just looking at one research article, but it's looking at many research articles and drawing conclusions based on all those different articles about a certain subject and coming to a bigger conclusion. So a meta moment is like not just being in my head here, but stepping back and from a big standpoint, looking back at the big picture, looking at myself and saying, okay, looking at this big picture, how could I now respond from my best self? So it's related a lot of ways to the stop skill in DBT. So like stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. Very similar to that. So if I stop and took a step back and I was like, wait a minute, look at all these things going on. What's the wisest thing I could do to handle this situation from my wise mind self? So similar to those things. And also related to acting from your values. So if I was acting from my values in this situation, which it might be part of my best self, what would that look like? And how could I choose to do that? And finally, encouraging self-talk. So instead of talking negative to yourself and talking yourself down and putting yourself down and beating yourself up with your thinking, trying to boost yourself up with your thinking, try to encourage yourself. In DBT, they'll call it like cheerleading skills. Like, you got this, you can do this. You've done it before, you could do it again. Things change. It won't be like this forever. Things like that could help us get through it and like feel a little more confident that we could handle it and less distraught about it, for example. And one of the interesting things they said in the book is that if you talk to yourself as if you're in the third person, it's more effective. So instead of saying, well, okay, I got this, you can pretend you're someone else talking to yourself and saying, okay, you got this. Like a wiser self talking to yourself, like talking down to the struggling you. It's like, you're stronger than you think, instead of I'm stronger than I think. They said that it gives a certain perspective that helps with the emotion regulation. So just something to think about. All right, so putting it all together. So we're going to recognize what we're feeling. Notice the fact that we're feeling something. We're going to try to understand the causes of that. We're going to put some emotional words to what we're experiencing by perhaps looking at the emotion charts. Then we're going to try to strategize what's the most helpful and appropriate way to express this given who I'm with and the context I'm in and the timing and things like that. And if I am uncomfortable with the level of my emotions or what I'm experiencing, I could apply emotion regulation strategies such as from DBT in order to do that. So there you have it. I'm going to stop the share. So thanks for joining me and hope to see you again soon. All right, take care, you guys.